In this podcast episode, Joe Rogan sits down with Caleb Hammer, a finance content creator and entrepreneur, to discuss a wide range of topics, including American personal finance habits, the student debt crisis, political and social polarization, homelessness and crime, housing and investing, the impact of AI on jobs, gender dynamics among younger generations, and the challenges and opportunities in financial education today. Caleb shares his personal journey from financial struggle to building a successful business, offering insights on how individuals can take control of their finances and adapt to evolving economic realities. Caleb opens by describing his background as a typical example of an American struggling with student loans, credit card debt, and auto loans. He explains how common it is for young Americans to max out credit cards, propelled by inadequate financial education, often absent in families or schools. The U.S. currently holds over $16 trillion in credit card debt with high default rates, and auto loan debt surpasses even that, fueled by cultural attachments to big vehicles. Caleb candidly recounts his own wake-up moment, living paycheck to paycheck, realizing that the American dream of homeownership and financial independence was impossible to achieve under such debt. He emphasizes the importance of starting with paying off high-interest debts like credit cards and building an emergency fund as a foundational step toward financial stability. Caleb discusses the broader cultural challenges in financial literacy, noting that conventional personal finance content is often dry and unrelatable. His approach to educating the public combines entertainment with practical advice, leveraging roasts, drama, and relatable content that resonates especially with younger audiences who might otherwise avoid financial topics. He references his popular couples episodes, where financial stresses in relationships help engage millions of viewers. He and Joe lament the lack of life skills education in schools, such as budgeting and investing, and highlight the difficulty students face choosing the right degrees amid political capture and poor guidance from counselors. The discussion delves into the student loan crisis, with Caleb highlighting how the ease of borrowing inflated tuition costs and created unsustainable debt, which many borrowers struggle to repay over decades. He notes the repayment assistance programs introduced under the Trump administration that reduce monthly payments to as little as 1% of income, albeit extending debt duration potentially up to 40 years. Caleb articulates frustration over political and societal attitudes toward boomers, suggesting they had unprecedented economic advantages yet often squandered their opportunities for financial security. The consequences of prolonged debt include wage garnishment, default, and even reductions in Social Security benefits for retirees struggling with outstanding loans. The conversation shifts to broader societal issues, including government waste, inefficiencies in spending, and the politicization of public services. Joe and Caleb critique California's administration, citing multi-billion-dollar failings such as the delayed high-speed rail project and ineffective homeless programs. They discuss how policies often sound virtuous but fail on outcomes due to misaligned incentives, political capture, and entrenched bureaucracy. These conditions contribute to high unemployment rates and incentivize dependency rather than self-sufficiency. The role of powerful investors and political operatives like George Soros funding progressive district attorneys is mentioned as a factor in lenient criminal justice policies that impact public safety. The duo discussed the complex issue of rising homelessness and crime in cities like Austin, LA, and San Francisco. They expressed sympathy for vulnerable populations, but stressed the need for accountability and safety for taxpayers and law-abiding citizens. The failure of the housing-first approach and the politicization of criminal justice reform are debated. Caleb points to contrasting models, such as Houston's centralized homeless services that provide assistance effectively and cost-efficiently compared to California's fragmented nonprofit networks. They lament how mental health and substance abuse issues intersect with homelessness, making simplistic policy solutions inadequate. Joe and Caleb analyze the shifting dynamics of homeownership, especially in the context of rising interest rates and changing socioeconomic priorities. The traditional American dream of buying a home is questioned as being less financially advantageous today compared to investing in low-cost index funds like the S&P 500. Renting offers flexibility that aligns better with modern lifestyles, particularly for younger generations seeking mobility. They discuss the elitism sometimes attached to homeownership and how some people irrationally equate renting with instability. The role of luxury real estate as a store of wealth for billionaires and foreign investors is also touched upon, along with the problematic consequences of vacant high-value properties and overbuilding in some urban centers. The cultural significance of cars in American life is a recurring theme. Caleb notes how many Americans overspend on new vehicles, often taking on high-interest loans for status rather than necessity. He advocates for buying used cars, especially electric vehicles that depreciate quickly but offer long-term savings in maintenance and fuel. Caleb explains that the perception of safety and desirability drives demand for new cars, despite older models being comparably safe. Car ownership represents freedom and social status in American culture, which makes it a challenging expense for many to curtail despite financial advice urging moderation. The decline of vocational education and trade programs is lamented as short-sighted given the current labor market. Caleb stresses that trades like plumbing, electrical work, and HVAC offer stable and well-paying careers resistant to AI automation. He explains how degrees have become less valuable for many, especially as they often lead to lower-paying jobs and burdensome debt. The political capture of higher education is discussed, with descriptions of skewed ideological environments that discourage dissent and critical thinking. Caleb recommends practical alternatives such as community colleges, apprenticeships, self-education via online platforms, and cautious selection of degrees based on career viability and resistance to automation. Both hosts explore AI's uncertain impact on the job market. They acknowledge that while AI threatens to automate many routine tasks and lower-skilled jobs, especially in customer service and administrative roles, it could also create new opportunities. Trades requiring creative problem-solving and manual skills are expected to remain relatively secure. Caleb warns that poor educational choices made in recent years, particularly degrees in humanities and social sciences, heighten vulnerability to AI displacement and may fuel further political radicalization as affected demographics grapple with economic frustration. Caleb and Joe reflect on the increasing polarization along gender lines among younger generations, with women tending to move leftward politically and men moving rightward. They discuss the intense gender tensions fueled by social media echo chambers, including phenomena like the 4B movement in South Korea, which advocates abstinence from dating and sex as a form of protest against perceived systemic patriarchy. They connect this radicalization with broader online tribalism, declining birth rates, and growing social isolation. They also address the ongoing gender wealth gap, driven by educational and career choices, and how having children often shifts political and economic priorities. The need for immigration is outlined mainly from an economic and demographic perspective to counter declining birth rates and sustain social safety nets. They argue for selective, high-skill immigration to arrest brain drain and preserve economic growth. Open borders are rejected as impractical due to cultural and economic concerns. Caleb discusses the importance of maintaining a balanced dependency ratio to ensure working populations support retirees, citing countries like South Korea and Italy as cautionary examples of demographic collapse. Caleb emphasizes the importance of personal responsibility in financial decision-making, urging people to acknowledge their agency rather than adopting a purely victim mentality. He argues that systemic problems exist, but individual behaviors, such as overspending, poor budgeting, and incurring unnecessary debt, are equally significant contributors to financial distress. He acknowledges that changing behavior is difficult but necessary for long-term success, and encourages budgeting tools and incremental progress towards stability. His budgeting app, Dollarize, is designed to simplify this process for ordinary people tired of complex financial advice. Caleb expresses cautious optimism about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum as part of a diversified investment portfolio, but critiques the speculative nature and risks of meme coins and non-fungible tokens, NFTs. He describes the crypto space as a wild west, rife with pump-and-dump schemes, money laundering potentials, and naive investors hoping to beat the system. They discuss government digital currencies and the potential dangers of centralized financial control tied to social credit systems, which could curtail individual freedoms. The importance of prudence and education about financial risks is underscored. Caleb shares his personal path from a tech product manager with a background in music composition to becoming a successful finance YouTuber and entrepreneur. He explains how he strategically avoided quitting his stable job before confirming the viability of his channel and business ventures. His content combines entertainment with financial education, attracting millions of viewers and tens of thousands of paid subscribers through exclusive shows and services. His business also includes personal finance loans and budget management tools, aiming to fill gaps left by traditional financial advisors. The conversation highlights how social media algorithms intensify political and social polarization by confining users to echo chambers that reinforce extreme viewpoints. Caleb attributes the widening ideological divides on issues such as criminal justice, gender relations, and economic policy partly to these digital feedback loops. He stresses the importance of diversity of thought and respectful dialogue across political and social lines, noting the dangers of ostracism when dissenting opinions are silenced, especially in educational settings. Both hosts reflect on the tension between societal welfare and individual accountability, noting that overly lenient social safety nets can sometimes create perverse incentives, discouraging work and self-improvement. They caution against performative policies that prioritize optics or political gain over effective outcomes. Caleb advocates for pragmatic solutions that empower individuals to overcome hardship, such as budgeting, financial education, and realistic career planning, rather than relying solely on systemic fixes or victim narratives. Caleb and Joe bemoan the removal of practical life skills classes, such as auto repair, cooking, and financial literacy from school curricula. They discuss how budgets and enrollment pressures have prioritized college readiness at the expense of vocational training and essential survival skills. This educational gap contributes to younger generations being ill-prepared for financial independence and responsible adult life. They encourage supplementing formal education with self-directed learning, accessible through online resources, to bridge this divide. The discussion acknowledges how cultural norms around consumption, status, and lifestyle choices, such as spending heavily on cars, dining out frequently, and prioritizing superficial rewards, undermine financial stability. Caleb points out that many young people unknowingly sabotage their economic future through 1,000 cuts of small expenditures like food delivery and luxury items, which cumulatively prevent savings and investment. The ingrained desire for social validation through material possessions complicates efforts to promote financial responsibility. Finally, Caleb and Joe consider the broader future of work and societal cohesion amid technological, demographic, and ideological shifts. They highlight the necessity of adapting education, investing in resilient career paths, and fostering a renewed sense of community responsibility. The episode underscores the complexity of these intertwined issues, emphasizing that there are no simple solutions, but that individual agency, coupled with systemic reform, offers the best path forward.